Martha, a 55-year-old woman, sat quietly in her living room on a calm afternoon. Her life had settled into a predictable rhythm since her children had moved out, and her husband, John, spent most of his time engrossed in work. Though she had grown accustomed to the stillness, it sometimes felt oppressive. Today, the silence was broken by the persistent flicker of her aging TV, which had been malfunctioning for a while. Finally deciding it was time for a repair, Martha called a local technician, expecting nothing more than a functional TV by the end of the day. When the doorbell rang, she opened the door to find a young man in his mid-30s. His name was Sam. Tall, athletic, with a charming smile and a confident yet respectful demeanor. Something about him instantly unsettled Martha. Perhaps it was his rugged handsomeness or the intensity in his deep brown eyes, but she felt an unfamiliar flutter in her chest, a sensation she hadn't experienced in years. Sam introduced himself, exchanged a few polite words, and then got straight to work on the television. Martha tried to appear nonchalant as she sat on the couch, but her eyes kept wandering toward him. His focused manner, the way he moved, even the subtle flex of his arm muscles as he worked, all of it captivated her. Embarrassed by her thoughts, she quickly looked away, reminding herself how absurd it was. She was much older than him. What could someone like Sam possibly see in a woman like her? Still, as the hours passed, the air between them seemed to change. A faint tension emerged, an unspoken connection neither acknowledged. Sam remained professional, yet their eyes occasionally met, and Martha couldn't shake the thought that he might feel it too. When he explained the issue with the TV, he stood closer than necessary. When he handed her the remote, his hand brushed hers, and the moment lingered longer than it should have. When he asked for a glass of water, Martha, eager to busy herself, quickly retreated to the kitchen. As she poured the water, her heart raced. She questioned why she was feeling this way. After over 30 years of marriage, she had never even considered another man. Yet now, something undeniable was stirring inside her, something she neither understood nor could control. When she returned, Sam was seated on the floor, fiddling with some wires. He glanced up and smiled as she handed him the glass, their fingers brushing again. This time, Martha didn't pull away, pausing for a beat longer than necessary. Sam's smile softened, replaced by an expression of curiosity, perhaps even longer. The room felt warmer, and Martha's pulse quickened. She sank onto the couch, struggling to find her words as the silence between them grew heavier. "I think I've almost got it," Sam said, his voice quieter now, as if testing the fragile atmosphere between them. Martha nodded, her mouth too dry to respond. Neither spoke for a while, but the growing tension was palpable. Sam's focus on the TV seemed to waver, his movements slowing, as if he were more aware of her presence than his task. Part of Martha wanted to flee, to escape the thrilling but unnerving energy enveloping them. Yet another part, a part she hadn't felt in years, longed to stay and see where it might lead. When Sam finished, he stood and wiped his hands on his jeans. "All set," he announced, his voice low and slightly husky. Martha rose to her feet, suddenly nervous and unsure of herself. "Thank you," she managed, her voice trembling. "How much do I owe you?" Sam hesitated, his gaze fixed on her, as if weighing his next words. "Don't worry about it," he replied with a faint smile between them. She could feel the heat radiating off him, catch the faint scent of his cologne. She knew she should insist on paying, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she stood frozen, her heart pounding as the space between them disappeared. Sam reached out and lightly touched her arm, his warmth sending a shiver down her spine. Martha looked up, her wide eyes meeting his, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. Without a sound, without a thought, she leaned in ever so slightly. Sam noticed, his eyes darkening, and though she feared he might pull away, he didn't. Instead, he moved closer. Their lips were barely apart, and his hand gently cupped her face. His fingers brushed over her cheek. His kiss was soft, tentative, as though they were both unsure of the step they were taking. But as the moment stretched, the kiss deepened, and Martha felt her worries and insecurities dissolve. In that instant, nothing else mattered, not her age, her marriage, or the years of solitude she had endured. Only the warmth of Sam's lips, his touch, and the way he made her feel truly alive. When they finally parted, their foreheads rested together as they caught their breath. Martha felt conflicted, ashamed, and exhilarated all at once. Sam's serious expression softened as he spoke. "Martha, I don't want to complicate your life." She offered a sad smile, knowing this perfect moment couldn't last. "I know," she whispered, "but thank you for making me feel alive." Sam nodded, brushing her cheek with his thumb one final time before stepping back. As he gathered his tools and walked toward the door, Martha felt a bittersweet wave of emotions: sadness, relief, and excitement all at once. She knew what had happened between them couldn't continue, yet she also knew she would never forget it. Before leaving, Sam turned to give her one last smile, a silent acknowledgement of the fleetingness of emotion. Martha exchanged a smile that conveyed more than words ever could. A warmth filled her chest, one she hadn't felt in years. As the door closed behind Sam, she returned to the couch, her thoughts racing. The TV was now functioning perfectly, yet that accomplishment felt trivial compared to what had just unfolded. For the first time in what seemed like forever, Martha felt a shift in her life, like a new chapter was starting. Sitting there with a soft smile, she began to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, it was all right to feel alive once more. Blue mists covered the sky, expanding to include the sun, and lengths slipped away, leaving only the darkness. Within the misty blue mists, leaving night hours seemed like they might never end. Time seemed to stretch endlessly as Martha sat in silence, replaying every detail in her mind: the kiss, Sam's gaze, and the lingering warmth on her skin even after he had left. It all felt surreal, almost dreamlike. She glanced at the now perfectly working TV, realizing how insignificant it was in the grander picture of her day. The real transformation hadn't occurred on the screen, but within her. For years, Martha had been emotionally dormant. Her marriage to John was steady but monotonous, lacking the fire and excitement that had once defined their early years together. John was a good man, but over time they had grown distant. They didn't argue, but they didn't connect either. Their lives ran parallel, side by side, without truly intersecting. Yet today, Sam had awakened something in her, a part of herself she believed was lost forever. It wasn't merely about physical attraction, though that was undeniable. It was about how Sam made her feel noticed. For the first time in years, someone had looked at her like she mattered, as though she was still desirable and capable of passion. The feeling was intoxicating. As the day gave way to evening, Martha found herself torn between guilt and exhilaration. She cared for John. At least, she thought she did. But what did love mean when the connection had faded? Could she continue in a marriage that felt more like a partnership than a romance? And what about Sam? Was he just a fleeting moment of excitement, or did he represent something deeper, something she had been yearning for without realizing it? The next day, Martha found herself frequently glancing at her phone, half hoping for a message from Sam. Even though she knew he didn't have her number, she wondered if he might return with an excuse to check on the TV, or simply to see her. But the day passed quietly, and by evening, she accepted he wasn't coming back. Perhaps it was for the best, she reasoned. Yet, no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't quell the longing for more. The kiss had sparked a craving for connection, for passion, for a second chance at something she had thought was long gone. She couldn't stop thinking about Sam or imagining how things might have been different if they had met at another time in her life. Could they have been something more? A few days later, the doorbell rang again. Martha's heart raced as she rushed to answer, hoping it might be Sam. But when she opened the door, she was met by John's familiar, tired smile. Briefcase in hand, he leaned in for the emotional turmoil brewing within her. That evening, as they sat together watching a mundane TV program, Martha found herself stealing glances at John. She tried to recall the last time he had made her heart race the way Sam had, but the memories were faint and distant. John had become a constant in her routine, someone she cared for deeply, but no longer connected with in the way she once had. A wave of guilt washed over her. How could she sit beside her husband and think of another man? It felt unfair to John, and it felt unfair to herself, but the truth was clear. Something had been missing for a long time, and she hadn't realized it until Sam had entered her life. In the days that followed, Martha tried to suppress her feelings for Sam. She threw herself into her routine, grocery shopping, cleaning, meeting friends for coffee. But everything felt altered now. The spark ignited within her was too powerful to ignore. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake thoughts of that kiss, the moment when everything seemed to change. Then, one afternoon, as Martha tidied the living room, the doorbell rang again. Her heart raced as she rushed to answer, half expecting John, though it was far too early for him to be home. But when she opened the door, she found herself face to face with Sam once more. Sam's familiar grin lit up his face as he softly said, "Hi." His tone was gentle, almost cautious. "I just wanted to check if the TV is still working." Martha's heart raced. She could tell this visit wasn't really about the TV. Sam had returned for a reason. What that reason might be, she wasn't sure, and she didn't know if she was prepared for it. Still, the connection between them was impossible to ignore. Without a second thought, she stepped aside and let him in. They stood in the living room, the silence between them heavy with unspoken words. The atmosphere was charged, and Sam's eyes searched hers. In his gaze, she saw the same emotions she felt: desire, uncertainty, and yearning. He took a step closer, and a familiar wave of exhilaration swept through her, just like it had during their last encounter. "I can't stop thinking about you," Sam confessed, his voice low and brimming with emotion. "I know this is complicated, but I needed to see you again." Martha's chest tightened at his words. She was torn between the life she had built with John and these unfamiliar but powerful feelings for Sam. "I don't know what to do," she admitted, her voice shaking. "I'm married, Sam. This isn't right." Sam gently reached for her hand, his touch sending a shiver through her. "I know it's not," he replied softly, "but sometimes things happen that we can't plan for. We can't control how we feel." Martha's eyes fell to their joined hands as her thoughts raced. She knew he was right. None of this was intentional. Yet here they were. She felt like she was standing at a crossroads, one that could completely alter her life. For what felt like an eternity, they stood in silence, their feelings hanging heavily in the air. Then, without deliberation or intent, Martha leaned in. Her lips met Sam's in a gentle, hesitant kiss. But this time, there was no second guessing, no reluctance. The kiss deepened, and all the emotions she had suppressed surged to the surface. When they finally pulled back, both were breathless, their foreheads resting against each other. Martha recognized that this was a pivotal moment, a choice that would reshape everything. "I don't want to hurt anyone," she whispered, her voice filled with doubt. "Neither do I," Sam responded, his voice tender. "But maybe this is your chance to find happiness again. You deserve that." Martha closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the storm of feelings within her. For the first time in years, she felt truly alive, as though she was on the edge of something fresh and thrilling. Perhaps, just perhaps, she was ready to take that step into the unknown. She didn't know what lay ahead, but felt a flicker of hope for the future. If this story touched you or resonated with your own experiences, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. I'll continue sharing stories like this, tales of strength, recovery, and discovering light, even in the darkest moments. Thank you for listening.